Welcome to the Trackpads Podcast, your go-to destination for exploring the rich history, strategies, and leadership lessons of warfare. I'm Jessica, reading this week's special episode on women in combat. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and sign up for the weekly newsletter. You can also explore more of Dr. Edwards' works by visiting trackpads.com. Let's get started. Women in combat, a historical perspective. Women have fought in wars for centuries, often defying societal norms and official policies to prove their capabilities on the battlefield. From legendary warriors of the past to modern combat soldiers, their roles have evolved alongside shifting cultural and military landscapes. While many have been overlooked in historical narratives, their contributions to warfare, from leading revolts and serving as snipers to piloting combat aircraft, have been undeniable. As military institutions worldwide have increasingly integrated women into combat roles, their presence has sparked debates, challenged traditions, and reshaped military strategy. This article explores the history, challenges, and impact of women in combat, shedding light on their resilience, skill, and enduring legacy in warfare. Early examples of women warriors. Throughout history, certain women have defied societal norms and stepped onto the battlefield, commanding armies, leading revolts, and shaping military history. Joan of Arc, the teenage peasant who led French forces to key victories during the 100 Years' War, defied gender expectations and was ultimately martyred for her role. Boudica, the Celtic queen, led a ferocious rebellion against the Roman Empire, leaving entire cities in ruin before her forces were crushed. Tomoe Gozen, the legendary samurai of Japan's Genge War, was renowned for her skill in battle, leading cavalry charges and engaging in hand-to-hand combat. These figures were not just warriors, but symbols of resistance, defiance, and the extraordinary capability of women in war. Beyond legendary individuals, entire groups of women warriors existed in the ancient world, some documented and others surrounded by myth. The Scythian women of the Eurasian steppes, often credited as the inspiration for the Amazonian warrior myth, were real mounted archers who fought alongside men in battle. Excavations of Scythian burial sites have revealed women buried with weapons, armor, and war wounds, supporting historical accounts that they engaged in combat. The Amazons themselves, though mythologized by the Greeks, were believed to have been based on real warrior cultures that allowed women to fight, challenging the Greek worldview that saw warfare as a male domain. These stories, both real and exaggerated, reflect how the presence of women in combat was not as anomalous as later history often suggests. In many societies, women took up arms when their communities were threatened, particularly in tribal and guerrilla warfare, where survival required every capable person to fight. Women fought in defensive wars, repelling invaders, leading local militias, and defending strongholds in times of crisis. From Viking shield maidens who sailed into battle to the Dahomey Amazons, an elite all-female military corps in West Africa, these warriors were integral to their society's defense and expansion. The necessity of war often blurred rigid gender roles, forcing societies to accept women as fighters when survival was at stake. While some of these roles were temporary, the imprint they left on history demonstrates the adaptability and resilience of women in combat situations. Despite these examples, historical views on women in combat varied widely, often shaped by cultural and religious norms that prioritized traditional gender roles. In many medieval and ancient societies, women were expected to support warriors rather than be warriors themselves, even when exceptions existed. Stories of female fighters were sometimes dismissed as anomalies or romanticized as exceptional rather than indicative of broader participation. In some cases, women had to disguise themselves as men to fight, reinforcing the idea that battle was inherently a male pursuit. Even in societies that allowed female warriors, their contributions were frequently downplayed or erased over time, rewritten into folklore rather than recorded as historical fact. Distinguishing between myth and historical reality is a challenge when examining women warriors, as many accounts were exaggerated, politicized, or shaped by cultural storytelling. While figures like Boudica and Joan of Arc are well documented, others remain shrouded in legend, making it difficult to separate truth from embellishment. The blending of history and mythology has contributed to a long-standing debate over the actual presence and impact of women in ancient warfare. However, archaeological findings, first-hand accounts, and military records continue to reveal that women were more involved in combat throughout history than previously acknowledged. The persistence of these stories, whether in myth or fact, highlights a fundamental truth. When war came, women fought. Women in combat during major wars. During World War I, women were largely excluded from direct combat roles but found themselves on the front lines in other essential capacities. Medics and nurses worked in harrowing conditions, tending to wounded soldiers, often just yards away from the battle. Many served as ambulance drivers, braving artillery fire to evacuate the injured, while others acted as battlefield surgeons, performing life-saving procedures under unimaginable stress. Women also played a vital role in espionage, with figures like Mata Hari and Edith Cavell using their positions to gather intelligence or aid resistance efforts. Though they were not wielding rifles in the trenches, their proximity to combat and direct impact on the war effort blurred the lines between combat and support roles. World War II saw a dramatic expansion of women's involvement in combat roles, particularly in the Soviet Union, where women served as snipers, pilots, and partisans. Soviet female snipers like Lyudmila Pavlichenko racked up hundreds of confirmed kills, striking fear into the enemy while proving their capability in direct combat. The legendary Night Witches, an all-female Soviet bomber regiment, flew daring nighttime raids in outdated bombards, harassing German forces with relentless precision. Beyond the Eastern Front, women fought in partisan groups, resisting Axis occupation in occupied Europe by ambushing supply lines, sabotaging infrastructure, and gathering intelligence. While most Allied nations still relegated women to support roles, the Soviet Union demonstrated that when given the chance, women could be just as lethal and effective in combat as men. Resistance movements across Europe and Asia relied heavily on the contributions of women, who often operated under the constant threat of execution if captured. In France, figures like Nancy Wake and the countless unnamed women of the French resistance engaged in sabotage operations, smuggling weapons and aiding downed Allied pilots behind enemy lines. In Asia, Chinese and Filipino women fought against Japanese occupation, using guerrilla tactics to disrupt enemy operations while also serving as couriers, medics, and intelligence operatives. Their ability to move undetected often made them invaluable assets in espionage and sabotage efforts, allowing them to strike at the enemy from within. While their roles were vital to the success of resistance operations, many of their contributions went unrecognized in post-war histories, leaving a gap in the acknowledgement of their sacrifices. The Vietnam War saw women playing a far more direct role in combat, particularly on the side of the Viet Cong, where they served as soldiers, scouts, and snipers. Viet Cong women operated in the thick of the jungle, laying traps, carrying out ambushes, and engaging in guerrilla warfare that often put them in face-to-face combat with U.S. troops. On the American side, women were primarily relegated to support roles, serving as nurses, intelligence officers, and administrative personnel. Despite their non-combat designation, many found themselves in danger, with nurses treating wounded soldiers under enemy fire and intelligence officers stationed in war zones where attacks were frequent. As in previous wars, the distinction between combat and non-combat roles was often blurred, as these women faced the same dangers and hardships as their male counterparts. Women's contributions to warfare have frequently been downplayed, omitted, or overshadowed by their male counterparts, despite their direct impact on military success. The official historical narratives of many wars often categorized women's roles as auxiliary, even when they engaged in combat or suffered the same risks as male soldiers. The reluctance to recognize their service in the same way as men led to delayed acknowledgement, with many women only receiving official recognition or veteran status decades after their service. Even among nations that allowed women to serve, their accomplishments were often minimized, reinforcing outdated ideas about their capability in combat. As historical records continue to be reevaluated, it becomes increasingly clear that women were not just passive supporters of war efforts, but active participants in shaping the outcomes of conflicts throughout history. Modern integration into combat roles. Many countries have progressively integrated women into combat roles, with some leading the charge decades before others. Israel has long been a pioneer, drafting women into military service since its founding in 1948, and later opening combat roles in units such as the Karakol Battalion, where male and female soldiers served side by side. Norway was among the first NATO countries to implement full gender integration, even introducing gender-neutral conscription in 2015 to ensure women were equally represented in its armed forces. Canada removed all restrictions on women in combat as early as 1989, allowing them to serve in frontline infantry, armored, and special forces units. These milestones demonstrate that while some nations hesitated to include women in direct combat, others recognized their capabilities and actively worked toward full integration. The U.S. military underwent a slower, more incremental shift in its policies regarding women in combat, culminating in a historic change in 2013 when the Pentagon lifted the ban on women serving in direct combat roles. Prior to this, women had served in combat situations unofficially, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan, where the nature of modern warfare blurred the traditional distinction between frontline and support roles. The ban's removal allowed women to officially compete for positions in infantry, armor, and elite special operations units, marking a major shift in American military policy. This change was not just symbolic. It meant that female service members could now take on leadership roles in combat arms units, breaking down institutional barriers that had previously limited their advancement. The evolution of these policies reflected both necessity and recognition, as battlefield realities had already proven that women were more than capable of operating in combat environments. Women serving in Iraq and Afghanistan provided undeniable proof of their effectiveness in modern combat operations, particularly in unconventional and counterinsurgency warfare. Female soldiers participated in raids, engaged in firefights, and worked alongside special operations teams and cultural support teams, which provided critical intelligence by interacting with local women in ways male soldiers could not. Some women became highly decorated for their actions under fire, with service members like Silver Star recipient Leanne Hester demonstrating exceptional bravery in direct combat. These wars also saw female aviators carrying out attack runs, intelligence officers directing drone strikes, and medics treating wounded troops under enemy fire. Their contributions showcase not only their physical and mental resilience, but also the evolving nature of modern warfare, where rigid front lines no longer define combat zones. Advancements in military training and technology have played a significant role in integrating women into combat, shifting the focus from brute strength to technical skill, precision, and endurance. Modern weapons and combat tactics increasingly rely on intelligence, strategy, and teamwork rather than sheer physical force, allowing women to compete on a more level playing field. Training programs have adapted to prepare both men and women for the physical and psychological demands of combat, ensuring standards remain high while addressing potential disparities in strength through specialized conditioning. The use of technology, such as drones, cyber warfare, and enhanced protective gear, has further expanded opportunities for women to serve in roles once dominated by men. These advancements reinforce the idea that combat effectiveness is determined by capability, adaptability, and skill, rather than outdated notions of gender roles. Despite progress, women in combat still face significant challenges, ranging from physical standards to societal and cultural resistance within military institutions. Critics argue that maintaining equal physical performance standards is essential to unit cohesion, while others debate whether modifications should be made to account for physiological differences. Resistance from traditionalist factions within the military has also created hurdles, as some service members continue to question the effectiveness of mixed-gender combat units. Additionally, issues such as harassment, discrimination, and the struggle to balance family responsibilities with military careers continue to impact female service members at all levels. While barriers are gradually breaking down, the challenges faced by women in combat roles highlight the ongoing cultural shift required to achieve full integration within military forces worldwide. Challenges and controversies. The inclusion of women in combat roles has faced deep-rooted resistance throughout history, largely due to cultural and traditional norms that have long associated warfare with masculinity. Many societies viewed women primarily as caretakers and supporters rather than warriors, reinforcing the belief that combat was inherently a male responsibility. Even when history provided examples of women excelling in battle, these instances were often treated as anomalies rather than evidence of capability. Religious and ideological beliefs further cemented these restrictions, with military institutions shaping policies based on long-standing gender roles rather than operational necessity. The result was a systemic reluctance to acknowledge women's contributions on the battlefield, even when their actions proved critical to military success. Physical standards have remained a contentious issue in the debate over gender integration in combat units, with opponents arguing that lowering requirements to accommodate physiological differences could compromise operational effectiveness. The military has historically designed its physical fitness tests around male averages, creating a challenge for women striving to meet the same benchmark. Some advocate for gender-neutral standards based solely on job requirements, while others argue that the ability to perform under combat conditions should be prioritized over rigid testing metrics. The debate extends beyond physical strength to endurance, injury rates, and long-term sustainability in high-stress environments, raising questions about how best to ensure combat readiness without creating unnecessary barriers. While women have proven time and again that they can meet elite standards, the broader discussion remains a point of contention in military circles. Beyond physical challenges, women in combat roles often face significant social and institutional obstacles, including harassment, discrimination, and the mental health strain that comes with breaking traditional military norms. Despite policies aimed at fostering inclusivity, reports of sexual harassment and assault within the military continue to highlight the difficulties many female service members endure. Discrimination can manifest in subtle ways, such as being overlooked for promotions or excluded from key assignments that would advance their careers. The mental toll of constant scrutiny, combined with the pressures of operating in a traditionally male-dominated space, adds another layer of stress to an already demanding profession. Efforts to address these issues have led to reforms, but cultural resistance within certain military communities remains a persistent challenge. Balancing family responsibilities with the demands of a combat career presents another obstacle, as deployments, unpredictable schedules, and combat readiness expectations place immense strain on personal lives. Military service, especially in combat roles, requires extended periods away from home, often making it difficult for women to navigate both career advancement and family obligation. While men in combat also face these challenges, women frequently bear additional societal expectations related to caregiving and family roles, which can create further complications. Some militaries have introduced policies aimed at supporting work-life balance, such as extended parental leave and childcare assistance, but these initiatives are not universally applied or sufficient to address the full extent of the issue. The struggle to balance professional and personal responsibilities continues to be a factor influencing retention rates and career longevity for women in combat roles. The effectiveness of mixed-gender combat units has been a subject of debate, with studies and real-world examples providing varying perspectives on the topic. Some argue that mixed-gender units can enhance operational effectiveness by bringing diverse skill sets and problem-solving approaches to the battlefield. Others contend that differences in physical capabilities, unit cohesion, and interpersonal dynamics could create challenges in high-intensity combat situations. The military has conducted numerous studies examining the impact of gender integration on combat effectiveness, with results often influenced by pre-existing biases or differing methodologies. What remains clear is that successful integration requires strong leadership, clear standards, and a culture that prioritizes performance over outdated notions of gender roles. As more women continue to serve in combat, ongoing assessments of their impact will shape the future of military operations worldwide. Impact and legacy. Women in combat have played a crucial role in military success, bringing diverse skills, perspectives, and strategic advantages to the battlefield. Their contributions have ranged from precision marksmanship and intelligence operations to leadership in high-stakes missions, proving that combat effectiveness is not defined by gender. The integration of women into combat roles has also expanded operational capabilities, particularly in counterinsurgency and unconventional warfare, where cultural and social dynamics require a nuanced approach. Female engagement teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, for example, provided critical intelligence by interacting with local women, an area where male soldiers had limited access due to cultural restrictions. As warfare evolves, the diversity of skills and perspectives that women bring to combat operations continues to enhance military adaptability and success. The presence of female combatants has had a profound effect on societal attitudes toward gender equality, challenging long-held perceptions of what women can and cannot do. Throughout history, women have had to prove themselves repeatedly in male-dominated spaces, and combat roles have been one of the most visible arenas in this struggle. Their service has forced discussions on equal opportunity, capability-based assessment, and the dismantling of traditional barriers in both military and civilian sectors. The courage and effectiveness demonstrated by women in combat have served as a broader catalyst for change, influencing policies on workplace equality, leadership opportunities, and professional advancement beyond the armed forces. Each step toward full integration has contributed to a larger societal shift in recognizing women as equal participants in national security and defense. The inclusion of women in combat roles has fundamentally reshaped military recruitment, training, and leadership structures, requiring a reevaluation of traditional models. Recruitment strategies have expanded to actively encourage female enlistment, recognizing that a broader talent pool strengthens military effectiveness. Training programs have evolved to ensure both men and women meet the same rigorous combat standards, fostering an environment that prioritizes performance over gender. Leadership development has also seen shifts as more women rise through the ranks and take command positions in combat units, setting new precedents for future generations. These changes are not just about fairness, they are about maximizing operational efficiency by drawing from the full spectrum of available talent. Role models and pioneers in military combat roles continue to inspire future generations of women in uniform, proving that perseverance and skill can break even the most entrenched barriers. Figures like Soviet sniper Lyudmila Pavlichenko, U.S. Air Force pilot Colonel Nicole Malachowski, and countless others who have served in elite combat units have paved the way for women striving to serve at the highest levels. Their stories serve as motivation for young women considering military careers, demonstrating that combat roles are not exclusive to men. Military academies, training programs, and officer schools have seen increasing numbers of female candidates determined to follow in their footsteps. Reshaping the demographic composition of the armed forces, each woman who steps into a combat role builds upon the legacy of those who fought before her, reinforcing the notion that skill, leadership, and courage are not bound by gender. The fight for full equality in military combat roles is ongoing as women continue to push against lingering barriers and institutional biases. Some nations have fully integrated women into combat units with great success, while others remain hesitant or maintain outdated restrictions. Efforts to ensure equal opportunities extend beyond simply allowing women to serve. They involve addressing structural challenges, eliminating discrimination, and providing support systems that enable long-term career success. Military organizations worldwide are increasingly recognizing that operational effectiveness is best achieved by utilizing all capable individuals, regardless of gender. The continued presence of women in combat not only strengthens military forces, but also reinforces the broader principle that skill, dedication, and courage are the defining factors of a warrior, not gender. Conclusion. The history of women in combat is one of perseverance, skill, and undeniable contribution, despite centuries of resistance and under-recognition. From ancient warriors and resistance fighters to modern combat soldiers, women have continuously demonstrated their ability to excel in battle, adapt to evolving warfare, and break through institutional barriers. Their inclusion has not only strengthened military forces, but also challenged societal perceptions of gender roles, influencing broader discussions on equality and leadership. While challenges remain, the increasing presence of women in combat continues to shape military strategy, training, and recruitment, ensuring that the future of warfare is defined by capability rather than outdated restrictions. As history has shown, when given the opportunity, women do not just participate in combat, they redefine it. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Trackpads Podcast. Don't forget to check out the Trackpads online newsletter, where we take things to the next level with multimedia content. Each issue features fascinating and informative photos, videos, and articles that bring the stories of military life to you in a dynamic and engaging way. Be sure to subscribe at trackpads.com to stay informed and entertained. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the incredible world of military history and life.